Hello everyone, welcome to the Aardvark Swift podcast. I'm your host Michael Rodber. With me today I am talking to Blackbird Interactive. They're a future-driven studio based in Vancouver, and I'm talking to Pam Lee, the HR Director, Rory McGuire, the Chief Creative Officer, and Yggy King, the Chief Technical Officer. Hello to you all, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Great to be here.
No problem at all. So let's kick things off then. Would you mind telling me a bit about Blackbird Interactive as a whole, what you guys are up to, and how the company was kind of founded, and a bit about your history, if that's okay?
Yeah, I could start with a little bit of background. We were actually incorporated in 2007, but we didn't really get going until 2010. Initially, we set up in what we called Studio Zero, which was our CEO Rob Cunningham's garage. He'd spent the previous year or two sort of talking to lots of people and trying to drum up interest, trying to find a team, trying to get enough funding to get things off the ground. And then, we finally got it together late 2010. You might think the company was named after blackbirds flying around in Rob's backyard, but we're actually named after the SR-71 Blackbird spy plane, which was developed by Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works program. And, Rob loved the name because it's associated with advanced technology, high speed, a little bit of mystery and secrecy. So we thought it seemed pretty fitting. A little more on the history of the company. So we'd been brainstorming for about a year prior to starting operations. We finally got a bit of seed money. This is, if you remember, 10 or 12 years ago, Facebook was making all kinds of money, or Zynga was making all kinds of money with Facebook games. And we thought we could create much more interesting experiences than Mafia Wars and what they were doing. We were working on a game called Hardware, which was this sort of vehicle fantasy set on a desert planet. The idea was you'd have thousands of players sort of interacting asynchronously, bumping into each other in the environment, exploring the map, understanding the world, hearing the backstory, and seeing all these amazing high-quality videos that would pop up in reaction to events on the terrain. And it was all about giant trucks, lumbering around in the desert and kind of getting into that fantasy of exploration and heavy equipment. And on that note, when we eventually outgrew Rob's garage, we had 14 people in the garage at peak, which was a little squishy. And we moved into a big warehouse space that used to be the paint shop for Finning, who were a local heavy equipment company that made Caterpillar tractors. So it seemed pretty fitting to the fantasy of our game that here we were in this warehouse space where with the smell of old vehicles around us, and we were making this game about giant vehicles. So anyway, that was we were a couple of years into development at that point. I think maybe our ideas were a little bit too ambitious, or maybe we were a little naive about what it took to make something brand new and get a new company started. And by the time we put together a sort of compelling demo for the hardware project, we pretty much ran out of money, and the market for Facebook games was kind of evaporating. Thankfully, it was right around that time. This was end of 2012. Gearbox bought the Homeworld IP when THQ went bankrupt, and they came looking to us for help to gather up some of the original assets, because Homeworld was a 3D space-based real-time strategy game developed by Relic, and Rob Cunningham, our CEO, was one of the founders of Relic, and he'd been the art director on Homeworld. So Gearbox was like, oh, I bet you know where to find those old audio files, or the model of that spaceship or whatever. So anyway, we got chatting with them. We were helping them get things together for their Homeworld remaster. And we started talking about how the themes and ideas of the hardware project were actually quite in line with the Homeworld universe. And anyway, to cut to the chase, we ended up making a more traditional RTS game set on a desert planet of Karak in the Homeworld IP with all of our giant vehicles. And we shipped Homeworld Deserts of Karak in 2016. So, Gearbox sort of helped us turn the company around at that point, and we got a project under our belt. We got it into the market, and we started getting a lot more visibility. We had people contacting us about projects. We started work on another PC RTS game that was recently announced as Crossfire Legion. We also started to develop Hard Space Shipbreaker, which is out in early access now. It's a zero-gravity spaceship demolition game. That grew out of a game jam we did after Deserts of Karak. We also made Project Eagle, which was a Mars simulation piece we did with NASA. We also did some co-development with Microsoft on their Minecraft Earth augmented reality project. So anyway, we've got lots on the go now. We've moved out of the warehouse and into 2 floors of the office building next door. and we're working on a whole bunch of work for hire and internal projects. So it's been pretty exciting. It's been quite a ride.
Absolutely, that sounds fantastic. I really like the sound of sort of the backstory. It all sounds very thematic, almost, of like the industrial and mechanical stuff, and then the future driven stuff, especially with the name, and then all that coming together into like the space theme stuff that you've got with Homeworld and all your other projects. It's a really nice story. Aside from that background, what would you say makes Blackbird stand out as a studio?
Well, first of all, I wish all of you could see what our reactions are, because Rory has like the warmest twinkle in his eyes when he hears Yggy talk about where we were and where we are now. And I really love that. But one of the things that makes us stand out is our creativity. And it's not just like the things that we do, it's how it comes out, how we support it, how we support our employees to be creative and innovative. And I'm gonna have to be honest and share something with you. This month is my 2-year anniversary, and I'm kind of like Rory. I've got these like warm feelings and feeling really nostalgic. And it got me thinking about a program that we have that kind of it illustrates creativity and how we support our employees really, really well. And we've got this incubation program called Skunkworks, and we've had it since 2019. So it's a formal program since 2019. And so what we do is we dedicate time and resources to encourage and support our staff to create and propose concepts for development. So for BBI, Blackbird, to develop. And so I remember my first 2 weeks, I was sitting in, and I just so happened to be so lucky to see those people who were participating in the 2020 Skunkworks. And there were so many people participating. Like, I've been working in studios for a while, and it's like pulling teeth to get people to participate. You might get maybe about 3 or 4, and I've been in a studio of almost like 800 people. So I think there was like maybe about 11 teams that were presenting. There was just this crazy energy. People were buzzing, and they were so proud of their work, and the ideas were fantastic. They were so well presented. Like, they all had a great template. They were so good at presenting, and not everybody's like public speaking is their thing. But because they were so engaged and invested in presenting their work, you'd think they were doing it for the first time in their life. And you had people who were newbies, people who weren't even like a designer. They were actually like an associate producer showing their design work. And I was just like, it was mind blowing. And for me, it was really inspiring because, a lot of people talk about, encouraging their employees and supporting their employees. This is a program that works. We have one that's actually in pre-production, and we have 2 more, at least 2 more, that are going into prototype. So that's a program that just started in 2019. And today we have projects from our employees that are part of the future of Blackbird. See,
Yeah.
told you I'm feeling all warm.
There's nothing wrong with that, especially from the sounds of that kind of culture that you've got going on. I think a project like that is sort of cyclical. Like, if you're kind of developing the people that you bring in, it's going to attract other people that are like-minded, wanting to bring those people into your studio. So I think that's fantastic. How did a project like that come about? Whose idea was it, and how do you get that kind of thing off the ground?
It was born out of, so when we first did what would become Hard Space Shipbreaker, it was actually born out of a game jam. So Yggy mentioned Homeworld Desert Sakarak. That was the first game that we shipped, and people had been working on it for, at that point, a few years. And when it shipped, we wanted to give people kind of a creative refresher. When you go into that final stage of production, when you're finaling a game, it's like bug fixing, and you're working out of Jira. It's not as creative, and it's not as like, it's more, you're being more creative in how you solve problems and less creative like Blue Sky. So we want to get people back to those Blue Sky creativity. So we did this game jam, and the game jam, there were 5 teams that did it. We basically put no parameters on it. I think we said, please use Unity, and that was about it. I actually think one of the teams used a different engine. But anyway, we basically put no parameters on it at all, and had 5 different teams, and they were all really great and unique and fresh and accomplished what we want to. They were a fun thing for the teams to do. But there was one team that produced this 0G exploration game that was kind of the the kernel. It was maybe 20% of what Shipbreaker would one day become, but it really just captured our hearts and souls. And I think a week later we greenlit it to go into prototype. And so what we wanted to do when we were starting to look at new projects was go back to the magic of that game jam, go back to letting people be creative, go back to teams collaborating and bouncing ideas back and forth and coming up with just really crazy things. And so the Skunk program is really about that, is about creating a little bit more structure. So we provide essentially some like what we call secret ingredients. It's like Iron Chef when they would reveal the secret ingredient, and that's what you need to make all your dishes out of. So we'll provide some secret ingredients, which also prevents people pre-cooking their ideas too much, because we do want to keep it slightly spontaneous. And then we do a mixer where we bring everybody together, we reveal the secret ingredients. It's a pretty fun time actually, that mixer, because there's literally like people going up to each other and pitching ideas and trying to find like, do you want to make a third person action game? Okay, this person wants to make a third person action game. What about you? Do you want to do a third person action? Okay, what can you do? And it's pretty special. It's pretty cool. And then they form up into these teams. We do require that they're teams, not individuals. It needs to be at least 3 to 5 folks. And then they pitch their idea. And those ideas in the first round, people were grabbing like clip art off the internet and throwing them into a deck, and that was great. And then by the second round, people were building prototypes. They were doing their own concept art. Someone actually wrote a music piece for one of them and shared the music piece because it captured the tone and vibe that they wanted. And it was all just, in the interest of creating something cool and collaborating with other people. As Pam said, we've selected, we've done 2 runs of it. The first run had about 40 people pitching 11 different concepts. And then the second run had 14 teams, about 50 people. And we've chosen 3 projects out of those runs. And we're actually about to do it again. We're going to do another one here in spring.
Obviously, we've just been talking about the origins and that starting out in a garage sort of epitomises working out a passion. And it's nice to hear that you still kind of maintain that kind of spirit and culture dragging through and, working from the ground up on projects and having sort of minimal kind of control just for fun and to keep that spirit of game design, which is, I think, ultimately what it's about.
And also too, like Pam said this, I think part of what we want to do as a studio, and this was really in the ethos of that early days, is finding really great people and then enabling them. It's not about finding people that can be a pair of hands to some person that has all the answers to everything. We actually want people that are extremely competent in what they do, extremely creative in what they do, and then just do the best we can to let them do their best work.
That's kind of like touching a bit on the culture that you have at Blackbird, and I'm sure just one element of all the sort of great work that you do. What else can you tell me about what it's like to work there, what the people are like, and how you kind of have that community there?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about like creativity and collaboration and listening to our employees. And I think that's something that really rings true to the people in our studio, to what we do. And I know Rob always says it's about the people. And I can't tell you how many times he's reined me in because, let's face it, I'm HR and I got to make sure that legally we're doing things right and we're growing in the right direction. But a lot of times he'll say that and I'm like, yeah, you're right. I need to clean up this very heavy process driven thing because I don't want anything I'm doing to get in the way of creativity and get in the way of people needing to do what they need to do and do their best work. The other thing about Blackbird is that it's everybody has a capability of coming up with great ideas and doing great things. And I think Skunkworks is a really great example of that. But I've seen some of the best ideas come from somebody brand new. I've seen the best ideas come from people in the C-suite. But we all work together to flesh out those ideas and make it work. And, some of the best HR ideas honestly don't come from HR. They come from feedback from the employees.
Could you tell us a bit about the hiring process and how you bring in the right people to make such a collaborative environment work as well as it does?
We don't do anything like super out of the ordinary when it comes to like the interview process. You submit your application online to our website. We have a jobs page. We're also on LinkedIn as well, and all of our jobs are there. But in the interview process, yes, of course, we're looking for people who have experience, have the relevant skills, but we're looking for people who can tell us what they're passionate about, what drives them. And when I'm talking to somebody, I want to know what art inspires you. Like, was there a key moment in a game where you're like, I aspire to do that? Why do you want to be part of Blackbird? Like, is there a key thing that drives you to be with us? We also look for people who don't want to just stay in a box, because Blackbird moves really quickly and we're really agile. We want to hear people's ideas. And for people who, take things step by step, and are more used to, I guess, a larger organization where you have to go through a lot of channels, this place can be really fast for them. And so it's really important for us to have people join us who want to hear their voice and want to see their ideas happen, looking for people who want to stretch themselves. And so I'd say if we get the opportunity to chat with you, we want to hear that from you. We want to know what your big, audacious goals are, but we also want to know what you're doing to get there. So that's the interview process. I mean, I could tell you, yeah, we hook you up with one of our recruiters who will check in with you, learn about, what you're looking for, and then you'll go on to meet the hiring managers. But I think the key thing is we want you to present your best self, and we want you to present your true self as well.
I was wondering if you have any sort of stories about people that you've brought on and that have got these ambitions and ideas that you've seen sort of flourish at Blackbird, and how they've kind of, developed throughout the time there. Is there anything that from the top of your head that comes to mind?
I have a couple of stories that jump to mind with that question. I think the two success stories on the creative side that I think represent what we hope to do at Blackbird is the game director on the Hard Space Shipbreaker team and the game director on the Homeworld 3 team are both students that started at Blackbird. I think one of them did an internship, but we were their first full job, and they've both been at the company. They'll be at 10 years, I think, when this podcast comes out. Like, they will have just celebrated their 10-year anniversary, and they were at the studio back in the garage days that Yggy was talking about. And they've just, over the course of their time at Blackbird, they've grown from junior designers. One of them came in as a UI artist. One of them came in as like just a pair of hands to tweak vehicles that Rob was giving them feedback on. And they've both grown into these very senior creative director roles or game director roles, but they're also just really essential people in the company. Like, they provide feedback on when we're deviating from our core values, or a process with one of the central teams being too challenging for their teams, or anything really. And they've got I think they have a really powerful voice at the table. But I think perhaps most importantly, what I'm proud of is just their journey at the studio. They started off as students, literally like had just closed their textbooks, and now are game directors and leaders of the company. So I hope we give that opportunity to every student that comes in the door for really the rest of the company's history.
I was, talking about how we're trying to bring in a variety of people and find ways to work strongly together as teams. A metaphor I like to use is the idea of whitewater rafting. Like, you might think that if you put people in a boat and you want to make progress as quickly as possible, you might have like a college rowing team in mind where you're, rowing down the Thames. You've got, 4 burly guys rowing in unison and going as fast as they can. But that's not really game development. Like, the things are never that buttoned up, and you never know exactly what the future is going to bring around the next bend. Whereas if you think of people going whitewater rafting, they're going down this crazy river. There's rapids. There's rocks they've got to avoid. Everyone needs to work together as a team. There might be one person who's got the the steering oar, and they've got some extra responsibility, or they're the guide. But everybody needs to do the right thing at the right time. And with the right whitewater rafting team, you can put quite inexperienced people in a boat with really experienced people and find a way for them all to work together. You're not being reckless. Like, you don't just throw people down an unknown river and send them over a waterfall. You scout out the territory a bit, but you never know exactly what's going to come around the next bend. And I feel like this is a good metaphor for well-equipped teams in game development, where you need a bit of flexibility, you need a bit of readiness to deal with the unexpected, but you all have to pull together as a team and each contribute your best self to the effort. And hopefully as a team you can, succeed and do great things.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's so important, that collaboration, but also the mentorship as well, and kind of bringing people up with you and kind of having that kind of dynamic of support and help. And that kind of leads me on to my next question, actually. Do you currently have like a graduate program, and also maybe like tell us a bit about the kind of mentorship and how you bring up juniors as well, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, so what we do there is our graduate recruitment is really focused on our cooperative education program. And so we hire a lot of student interns doing work placements during their studies, many of whom, continue to be full-time employees when they graduate. For myself, decades ago, I was a co-op student, and I found that really solidified my computer science education and gave me a chance to take what I was learning in the classroom and apply it in a work environment, which really strengthened and solidified the knowledge. And I, totally encourage everyone who's in school to find opportunities like that if at all possible. So we've been doing this for a long time. We hired our first co-op student when we were still like 8 people in the garage. I think our co-op student was maybe employee number 10 or something like that. And he was a student at the University of British Columbia here in Vancouver. And we've gone on from there and continued to hire lots of co-op students over the years. We currently focus on computer science and engineering students, and we work mostly with Vancouver area schools. So UBC that I mentioned, the BC Institute of Technology, the Centre for Digital Media campus is right next door to where we work. Simon Fraser University, the Vancouver Film School, which is where the folks Rory mentioned came from. And other schools across Canada too, like the University of Waterloo and McGill. We recently, just last year, we, similar to the story Rory was telling, we promoted somebody to senior programmer who first joined us as a co-op student back in 2013. So again, it's great to see that evolution of how we can bring people in at a junior level, and as with everybody, we make them a full member of the team. We give them the challenges they're ready for. We set them up with a mentor. We give them coaching and feedback as they need it, and just let everybody rise to the level they're capable of and keep trying to push them a little bit harder and a little bit harder. A lot of co-op students will come back to us for multiple work terms, which is great. We do encourage them not to do all their work terms with us, try and get a little bit of variety. And then if we like them and they like us, we'll give them an offer for full-time employment when they graduate. So yeah, it's been a great way to bring people in and kind of get to try people out and for them to see what Blackbird is about before we commit.
I think it's also a testament to what you were saying about your sort of collaborative and creative culture, is that you bring these people on early on in the career, and like Rory said, and like what you've said with the senior that's recently been promoted to senior starting in 2013, they've stuck with Blackbird all this time. Whereas obviously in the industry, it's not easy to move, but there's always other studios to move to. So I think it really says something that you retain these staff from start to finish, basically.
And we do have, we have turnover issues as well, but a lot of the people that leave us seem to go to small startups and start founding new companies. So it's kind of like if we've given someone the skills and confidence to go and be part of a core team starting a new company, then it's our loss that they're not working for us anymore, but it helps strengthen the industry as a whole. And, we feel bittersweet, but we feel good for those people who are now embracing a new dream.
So we've talked quite a lot about your studio, and it's all fantastic, but let's talk a little bit about the projects. We've sort of touched on it already, but one of them, which sort of caught my eye when I was looking into you guys, was it was described as a creative destruction with true-to-life physics and demolition effects. How do you go about developing something like that with those kind of mechanics in combination with like zero gravity?
Yeah, I mean, Shipbreaker is pretty special, Hardspace Shipbreaker, in that the gameplay that they designed or that they conceived, actually, there was a point where we were talking about this physics system and what we wanted to do with a demolition, how you would cut things apart, and how you would deform these ships, and we wanted the player to be able to do that anywhere. We didn't want it to be canned. We didn't want it to be for you to feel like you couldn't just tear this thing apart. And I remember, Yggy might remember this too. I remember we proposed that to the programmer, and he was like, no one has ever done this before in physics. No one has ever solved how to like dismantle a an object and turn it into two new objects and have them be dynamic. And so he started looking it up and looking for white papers on it, and he would find forum posts where people would ask the question on how to do this on various programming forums, and people would be like, yeah, you can't do that. He literally didn't find a single answer to his question, and so him and Yggy and the other programmers on the team had to conceive of a tech solution that hadn't ever been done before. So I think that team, in addition to being creative in a traditional sense, was also extremely creative in a technical sense, and that created a piece of technology that, hopefully there's a student that Googles that one day and finds Richard's post somewhere about how he solved it. But yeah, it was from in terms of how we use those mechanics and how we deploy that creatively. It was interesting because Shipbreaker isn't a shooter. It's not a strategy game. It's not a RPG. It essentially lacks all of the genre tropes that you would experience in other games. It's very unusual. And so when we made the game, we really liked just the sandbox of dismantling a spaceship, and we tried to make that as awesome as possible. And then we walked back how we wanted to turn that into a game, which I think was unusual in the development process. We were more interested in just this toy, building the toy and letting people express themselves with that toy. We actually had a lot of people compare the game to Minecraft, which it looks nothing like Minecraft, but it has a lot of the same kind of Zen qualities that Minecraft has.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting as a concept, and especially, hearing more about the process of having to even research and figure out stuff that's not been done before, and just a combination of so many different physics elements. Obviously, you've just brought up Minecraft. Minecraft Earth is something that you've sort of contributed to. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Minecraft Earth was a pretty special project to contribute to. It was we were approached by Mojang, and they asked us if we wanted to collaborate with them on this mobile title, but in particular it was the AR side of it. So the altered reality, this composite between digital and physical that was expressed through your phone, that we found to be really magical. I actually remember they showed us the demo, and this was probably 2 years before it came out, and I actually was like, is that a prototype phone? Like, I could not believe what they were doing on the phone. Like, it was so unique, and I'd never seen anything like it before. But yeah, essentially the game was, they were able to take the building mechanics of Minecraft and then project it onto a real world space. You could hold up your phone and be building these Minecraft structures and looking at it in real space and then looking at it in digital space at the same time. And we contributed, we weren't the sole developer of it. We contributed to several things that were related to UI in particular. But yeah, it was a really unique project. When we're all walking around with AR headsets in 50 years from now, I think Minecraft Earth will play a small part in the DNA of creating that AR experience.
Is it AR or VR kind of anything that Blackbird would potentially look to get into in the future, either co-development wise or, sole developers on?
Oh, we'll absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind we'll do one or the other in the upcoming future. We don't have anything announced right now, but I think AR in particular is really intriguing, and I think that there is for both AR and VR, there is a future there. I think people just have to solve how that future comes to pass. VR has already made massive strides in the last few years. It's not a breakout market like, say, the PC or the mobile market, where it's billions of dollars every day, or passing hands in the mobile market. But there's definitely something interesting there, and they're solving some technical problems, some interface problems. It's a bit like, I feel like VR is kind of in the space where mobile was with like top of the line flip phones. Like, everyone has a Razr and it's still not quite right, and then the iPhone comes out, and I think we're waiting for a piece of hardware in the VR space that is the iPhone of VR, which it's easy to use, pop on, pop off, much more accessible. I mean, I have no idea what that design is, but I do think it's coming.
It's always interesting to see those kind of designs and kind of what comes out and what's trialed and what should have succeeded or what maybe shouldn't have. Like, for example, the Google Glass, I remember that being such a big hype and then just obviously bombed catastrophically.
Oh yeah, and the space is littered with that going back to the 90s. There's all kinds of crazy VR things that people got really hyped about, and then they just fell apart. There was a piece of hardware a couple of years back where they were projecting light directly into your eye, so you could have this composite of physical and digital. I think that's fallen apart. Anyway, yeah, there's lots of interesting attempts, but one of them will succeed at some point. It's definitely a space with lots of attempts happening for sure.
So that's obviously not something that is going on right now, but if you go onto your website, there is 3 project files. If you wouldn't mind us talking a bit about those, you've got obviously Project 1 being Hard Space Shipbreaker, which we've talked about. Project 2 is a new take on RTS gameplay that combines your distinct art style, which I'd like to touch on later if that's okay. And then we've got Project 3, which is a unique third-person action game, which again, not much on, but if there's anything you'd like to talk about or maybe hint to, then please feel free to do so now.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely talk a little bit about those projects. I think partly the perception with Blackbird is that we're a sci-fi studio and we make RTS games. And as someone that can see right now, we've got 6 projects in development. And I think only 2 of those are announced. Maybe 3 of those are announced. We have 6 projects in active development. And the projects that aren't announced are nothing like the things that we have announced. They aren't strategy titles. They aren't even, some of them aren't even sci-fi. They're just whole new things. So I think the one thing I would say about our projects in general is that it's not that we're attracted to a genre that we want to, just make RTS games, or even like a setting, like we just want to make sci-fi games. I think we just want to make awesome games, and those awesome games can come in a lot of different ways. And we want to make games that excite us. So, I think there's some exciting announcements coming up. For sure. The third-person action game, there will be some details on that, I believe, in the next year, and more. Actually, I think we're going to be several announces will be coming out this year, of some of our biggest games. So it's going to be an exciting year.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'll be definitely keeping an eye on what's to come. But yeah, like I said, I do want to sort of talk a little bit more about the art style. Obviously, it's labelled as your signature art style. From what I would guess it to be, from what we've talked about, is that kind of industrial, mechanical, sci-fi space kind of thing. But like you said, you sort of branching out into different genres, not necessarily sci-fi. Am I correct in saying that's the signature art style, or is it a different thing that would be converted into these other genres?
No, I think that's part of it, but I think that part of it is just one manifestation of it. So I think the sci-fi stylings of the studio, I say this with humility, but I think we have some of the best artists in doing sci-fi, and they may not be the most famous, but those super famous artists that are doing sci-fi concepts will often reach out to them to get their take on, hey, I'm doing this piece for Halo, what do you think, or whatever. So the artists that we have are, some of them represent the kind of historical influence on the genre, guys like Rob Cunningham and Aaron Kambitz. But then there's also young up and comers fresh out of school that are just tearing it up on ArtStation that people they're not household names yet, but they will be. So I think in terms of the sci-fi art, absolutely, that's one of our signature things, and I think it's something that excites a lot of us, in particular the industrial design part of sci-fi vehicles, hard body surfaces. But it is more than that. So I think the style that we've tried to develop and we're continuing to develop, you can see in Shipbreaker, but you can even see in some of the non-sci-fi titles that we're doing, and that's what we're calling like a painterly style. And that painterly style, you can also see it even going all the way back to Homeworld, where the phrase that our CEO Rob uses, who's himself an artist and art director, he was the art director on the original Homeworld. He used a phrase called "seeing the hand of the creator." So being able to see the brush strokes, being able to see the personality of the person creating the art in the art. And sometimes that manifests as like dirty speed painting turned into textures, but other times it's making sure that you don't polish something to a level that all the personality goes away, like all the soul leaves it. So that's manifest in a few ways. You can see it in Shipbreaker and some of the texture work. You can see it in the Homeworld series. Their cinematics are essentially all these kind of hand-painted. Homeworld Desert Karak, which was built at Blackbird, had this where it was every frame was hand-painted or painted over, and even the scenes that we shot in mocap, we still went in and hand painted over every frame. It wasn't rotoscoped. There was no proceduralism to it at all. So I think that's probably one of the the bigger things. And then the last thing that grounds both of them is, I think in our art and our creative in general, we try to do things that are internally consistent in a way that you could describe them as realistic. So, even though we're doing sci-fi or fantasy, it's consistent in its world and its world building. And if a character is wearing an outfit, you can piece together why they're wearing that outfit, and it's consistent with the vision of what the game is presenting to you. And same thing with the vehicle designs that I often say, well, and this is true, is any of our vehicle designs, you can turn to the artist that made it and say, what is this doohickey here, or what does this pipe go to, or what is this thing, and they've conceived of this thing in a way that it could actually work. And I think that is consistent across all of our art, whether it's sci-fi vehicles or fantasy characters or anything.
I like that last part especially about it's almost like not designed for design's sake, but it's that as in combination with what is sort of true to sci-fi, is like imagining these other worlds and other mechanics and contraptions and stuff, and to put that thought into it and then let that bleed into the design, I think is something that I am a big fan of personally, so I like that a lot. Is there anything from a technical perspective you'd like to contribute to that, Yggy? Or
yeah, I guess just getting back to the whole collaborative notion of how we work and building things together as a team. I think game development presents some of the most interesting technical challenges to work on, because you're in this collaborative multidisciplinary environment, and you're working closely with new hardware, whether it's consoles or the latest PC graphics cards or whatever. So you're solving hard technical problems on the one hand, but you're working hand in hand with artists and designers on the other, and trying to figure out, come to this shared vision of what is this thing you're building? Why is it going to be fun? How is it going to be awesome? And what do the artists and designers need from a technical perspective to support them in achieving that vision? So yeah, it's been a real collaborative process throughout, and I think everybody gets to be a little bit creative, whether or not they have artist in their title.
Rory said that this is a big year for us, and I'd also mentioned how we really do listen to our employees, and I try to think about examples where we actually live what we say. I think that's really important. I want people out there to see that we're a studio of action. We're not just like, okay, this is a plaque and these are our values, this is what we do. Like, we live what we say we do. And when I say that we're employee driven and we listen to feedback, this is a good example of us listening to feedback. So our studio's been trialing the 4-day work week with 2 of our teams. And it actually, when I alluded to some of the best HR ideas don't come from HR, this is legit an idea that did not come from HR. So we have a leadership group from all disciplines that get together on a quarterly basis. And let's face it, like, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, what organization you're in, like, there's that whole scary thing called the Great Resignation. And we're not getting through that unscathed. People are starting to think about their next step. It feels like the world is unfreezing. COVID hasn't impacted every single person's role. And in fact, it seems like gaming is just blowing up during this crazy time. And we wanted to find out, what can we do better? Like, what do the employees want to see from us? And there was just so many ideas coming into this conversation with all the leads. I'm like, I can't follow all these. There's so many good ones. So it was just a Google sheet, like, just plop all your ideas on this Google sheet. And people did. And there were so many people saying that the 4-day work week would be really appealing. And there was a bunch of +1s for the person who brought it up. And then we got together as an executive team in the C-suite. And it was amazing how quickly we came to the decision to give it a try. The other thing about the studio, it took a bit for me to get used to, was how quick we are to just take a risk, give it a try. But it's safe risk taking. And so when we did this pilot, Yggy had his team just make sure that we were tracking things, making sure that we were getting feedback, doing surveys, coming up with the data to track, is this format of working leading to employee satisfaction? Is it impacting velocity and productivity? All the things that we worry about. And what we found was that it was overwhelmingly positive. When we approached this, it was really more of how can we create an environment for our employees where they could do the best work possible. Because certainly in the gaming industry, burnout, it's a real thing. And we wanted to make sure that we were thinking about our employees' health. And so when we saw that employees are saying, yeah, I've got more time for myself, I have more work-life balance, I'm able to get back to work on Monday and feel refreshed, and then we see that productivity isn't really being impacted, we're like, this is a real thing. And so I remember Rob was like, "This, it's a no-brainer. This is something we should do for the rest of the studio." And it's real. We are now going to be rolling this out, sometime during the year. But again, being really careful about it, asking the questions, checking in with the teams to see what needs to be recalibrated. But it came from the employees, and we banded together really quickly. Again, it's like what Yggy said, we collaborated. It wasn't just like, oh, HR is going to come in and save the day and run this program. It's like tech is in it. We're getting feedback from our artists. We're getting feedback from our producers. And it's leading to this really huge change in our studio. And I'm hoping that other organizations will also look at this and look at us as a model and say, you know what, it's doable. Like there's so many things that we learned in COVID. I remember at one time people were like, oh, there's no way we could have employees work remotely. Well, when push came to shove, we realized that it actually can be a very effective way for people to be able to work in a way that works for them. And now what's coming out of COVID and listening to employees is that Blackbird is going to be working a 4-day work week. So I think that's really exciting. I'm really interested to see how it plays out. But when I say it was fast, it was fast.
Obviously, I in my role, I kind of post all the job ads for all the studios through Aardvark and stuff, and I've not seen or heard any other studios that I could think of that are doing that. I think that's so forward thinking and so innovative, and I think it's really true what you say, that you are backing up being about the employees and really caring and taking those risks that pay off in a positive way for both the studio and the employees, like the jams that develop into fully fledged games. I think that's just an incredible outlook to have as a studio. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, the 4-day work week, I think, is Pam's not the only person excited about it. I will say that there's a lot of people that are kind of losing their minds that we're doing it, and in terms of excitement, they're so excited that we're doing it. And it's really interesting because I think when we started the trial, it was, yeah, sure, let's see if maybe this thing could work for some people. And then as we started to get data back, the data was just amazing. We did a pretty good job tracking commits that people were doing. We did polls with each one of the employees at multiple stages during the trials. And when we started the trial, there was something like 15 people, 25%, 30% of the people that were in the trial weren't certain it was going to work. And by the end of the trial, which was several months, it was 50 out of 50 people responded positively that this can work, and my velocity will stay the same, if not better. My work-life balance is better. Yes, it's great. So it was pretty amazing. And I think in that original group, there were a ton of people that were skeptics that were in the group, but also executives that were skeptical of it, myself included. I wasn't quite sure where it was going to end up, but yeah, it's really interesting. And I think a lot of people will look at it and say, well, that's not possible. How can you maintain velocity or be close to velocity? And I think if you're a business leader, I think you probably know that if you work 6 days a week, you don't get 20% more productivity, that there is a cost for people working more. And the reality is when people work 6 days a week, you get about 2 weeks more productivity, and then it actually drops. So when you work 6 days a week, if you do that for months on end, the productivity is lower than if you were working 5 days a week. And I think some of that, human affected mathematics or human affected telemetry is at play with the 4-day work week too, where by working less, your productivity is actually higher because you're more rested and you're able to apply yourself more. So yeah, we're very excited. It's going to be an incredible time, and I think it'll also position us as a studio to attract some people that, as Pam said, we're speaking with our values. We're doing crazy stuff.
Yeah, so it sounds like, especially with that 4-day week, you've got such a fantastic culture there. We've obviously covered a lot about it. Obviously, being Aardvark Swift, we do sort of recruitment, and we're part of your recruitment process. Just out of interest, and for the people that are potentially interested in working with you, what kind of are your immediate hires? What are the most important hires you're looking out for at the moment?
Well, we're looking for talent in all disciplines, all experience levels, but in particular, technical directors, gameplay programmers, console programmers.
Perfect, thank you. If you are interested in working with Blackbird, the roles that they have available with us will be on our website at Aardvark Swift. So if you are interested, please do get in touch. I've been your host, Michael Rodber. With me today has been Pam Lee, Yggy King, and Rory McGuire. Thank you very much for joining us. Cheers.